Fan 1. The Invisible Titan. My name is Elena. I am 38 years old. To my husband, Marcus, I am a failure. He sees a woman who stays home and cleans floors. He sees a wife who depends on his paycheck to survive. Marcus works as a senior manager at a logistics firm. He carries himself like a king. He struts around our house in tailored suits. He complains about the cost of my organic groceries. He reminds me every day that I am lucky he chose me. He calls me his charity case. But Marcus lives in a dream world. He has no idea who I really am. In the dark of our home office, I am a ghost. I am the founder and CEO of Apex Solutions. My company moves hundreds of millions in medical tech every year. My personal net worth is 8 figures. I don't just have money. I have power. I have employees who would jump off a bridge for me. But at home, I am silent. I hide my expensive watches in a locked safe. I wear old sweaters and leggings. I let Marcus think he is the provider. Why did I do this? Because 10 years ago, Marcus was different. He was kind. He supported me when I had nothing. I wanted him to feel like the man of the house. I wanted to give him the pride he craved. It was a gift that became a cage. Every month, I perform a ritual. I secretly transfer $2,000 into Marcus's personal account. I disguise it as a dividend from an old family trust he thinks I have. He spends it in days. He buys designer sneakers. He buys high-end whiskey. Then, he comes to the kitchen and yells at me for spending $40 on a steak. He calls me financially illiterate. He tells me I would starve in a week without his guidance. I look at him and say nothing. I swallow the truth like a bitter pill. I watch him belittle my mother when she visits. He tells her she's a burden. He tells her our house is too small for outsiders. My mother looks at me with pity. She knows the truth. She knows I own the building Marcus works in. She knows I could destroy his career with one phone call. But she stays quiet for me. The air in our marriage turned cold months ago. Marcus stopped looking at me. He stopped asking how my day was. He started coming home late. He smelled like expensive perfume and expensive lies. When I asked him where he was, he laughed. He told me a housewife doesn't need to know business. He told me to go back to the laundry. I realized then that the man I loved was dead. In his place was a monster I had funded. I had built his ego with my silence. I had fed his arrogance with my money. I was waiting for a sign to leave. I was waiting for the final straw. Then came the Tuesday that broke everything. I was in my real office. The one Marcus doesn't know exists. I was negotiating a $20 million merger. My heart began to race. My vision blurred. The room spun until the ceiling became the floor. I collapsed in front of my board of directors. The last thing I heard was my CFO, Sarah, screaming for an ambulance. When I woke up, I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't even a wife. I was just a patient in a white room. I was a body hooked to a machine. The doctor walked in with a face made of stone. He told me I had a mass. He told me it was aggressive. He told me the next 6 months would be a war. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. I called Marcus. It went to voicemail. I called again. No answer. I sent a text. I'm in the hospital. It's serious. Please come. 3 hours passed. 6 hours. The sun went down. The hospital became a tomb of silence. Marcus didn't show up. He didn't even reply. I spent my first night of cancer alone. I watched the IV drip into my vein. Each drop felt like a second of my life wasting away. I realized I had been protecting a man who wouldn't even check his phone for me. The next afternoon, the door finally opened. I expected Marcus to run to me. I expected tears. I expected an apology. But Marcus walked in with his hands in his pockets. He looked bored. He didn't look at my pale face. He looked at the television on the wall. He didn't ask about the diagnosis. He didn't ask if I was in pain. He sat in the chair and checked his watch. He told me he had a meeting in an hour. He told me hospitals made him uncomfortable. Then, he reached into his bag. He pulled out a stack of papers. He didn't offer me water. He offered me a pen. He told me he wanted a divorce. He told me he couldn't be tied down to a sickly woman. He said he deserved a life of energy and excitement. He said he was taking the house. He said he was taking the car. He told me I should move back in with my mother. He looked me in the eye and said I was a drain on his resources. He said he was tired of carrying my weight. I looked at the papers. I looked at the man I had supported for a decade. Something inside me didn't break. It froze. It turned into a blade of ice. I realized Marcus wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to rob me while I was dying. He had no idea that the house was already paid for by my corporation. He had no idea the car he drove was a company lease. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake anymore. I looked at Marcus and gave him a faint, ghostly smile. I told him I would sign. I told him he could have everything he thought he deserved. Marcus looked surprised. He thought I would beg. He thought I would cry. He told me I was being rational for once. He stood up and adjusted his tie. He told me he would have his things moved out by Friday. He told me he was moving in with someone who actually appreciated his success. He walked out of the room without looking back. He left me in the dark. I picked up the phone. I didn't call a doctor. I called Sarah, my CFO. I told her the plan was changing. I told her it was time to pull the plug. I told her to look up the logistics contract for Marcus's firm. I told her I wanted that contract cancelled by Monday morning. I told her to contact the landlord of his office building. I told her I wanted his floor evicted for renovations. I sat back against the pillows. The pain in my chest was still there, but the fire in my soul was hotter. Marcus thought he was leaving a sinking ship. He didn't realize I was the ocean, and I was about to pull him under. Part 2: The Fall of a King. He thought he won. Then the locks on his life changed. The weekend after the hospital visit was a blur of silence and steel. Marcus was busy. He was packing his bags in our suburban home, whistling as he threw my memories into trash bags. He thought he was moving toward a golden future with his new life. He didn't know I had already been discharged. I wasn't at home. I was in a high-floor suite at the Four Seasons, surrounded by lawyers and my executive team. My body was weak from the first round of treatment, but my mind was a predator. Monday morning arrived like a guillotine. At 8 a.m., the CEO of Marcus's company, a man named Sterling, received a formal notice. Apex Solutions was terminating its partnership with his logistics firm effective immediately. We provided 60% of their annual shipping volume. Without us, they weren't just losing money, they were losing their pulse. By 9 a.m., Sterling was screaming in the boardroom. By 10 a.m., the investigation began. I had instructed Sarah to provide a detailed report on operational inefficiencies within their management. Specifically, the management of Marcus's department. Marcus was at his desk when the security team walked in. He was leaning back, feet on the table, likely texting his mistress about their new apartment. He didn't see the storm until it hit his front door. Sterling didn't even let him sit down. He told Marcus that the titan of industry they had been serving had personally requested his removal. Marcus laughed. He told Sterling there must be a mistake. He told him he was the one who secured the Apex account. Sterling threw the termination letter at his face. He told Marcus that Apex didn't just want out. They wanted him gone. Marcus was escorted out of the building with his belongings in a cardboard box. He stood on the sidewalk in his $3,000 suit, looking like a ghost. But I wasn't done. I had spent years being the invisible wife. It was time to become the visible nightmare. I waited until Tuesday. I knew Marcus would be at the house, trying to change the locks. I drove there in a black SUV he had never seen. I walked through the front door with a team of professional movers and my lead attorney, Eliza. Marcus was in the living room, drinking the whiskey I had paid for. He looked up and sneered. He told me I had no right to be there. He told me the divorce papers gave him the house. Eliza stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She handed him a property deed. She explained that the house was never in his name. It wasn't even in my name. It was owned by a holding company under the Apex umbrella, and since Marcus was no longer an employee of any affiliated partner, his occupancy permit was revoked. I stood there, leaning on a cane because the chemo was making my legs heavy. But I held my head high. I told Marcus he had 1 hour to take what could fit in his car. He lost it. He started screaming about how I was a snake. He called me a liar. He asked how a pathetic housewife could own a corporation. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone and played a recording. It was the audio from the hospital. The sound of his voice telling me I was a drain on his resources. The sound of him asking me to sign my life away while I was hooked to a machine. The movers began taking the furniture. They didn't take my things. They took everything, every chair, every table, every light fixture. I had bought it all. Marcus watched as his world was stripped bare. He tried to call his mistress. The one he said appreciated his success. I watched his face turn gray as the calls went to voicemail. I had already sent her a gift earlier that morning. A legal notice informing her that Marcus was being sued for the misappropriation of company funds. The allowance I had given him was technically documented as a business loan. She was a climber. She didn't want a man in debt. She wanted a winner, and Marcus was currently losing everything. He slumped against the wall. The same wall I had painted while he was out drinking. He looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in a decade. He saw the expensive jewelry I was finally wearing. He saw the coldness in my eyes. He asked me why I didn't tell him. He asked why I let him believe he was the king. I told him that a king doesn't need to be told he is a king. I told him I gave him the chance to be a partner. But he chose to be a parasite. As the last rug was pulled from under his feet, Marcus realized the gravity of his mistake. He had no job. He had no home. He had a legal mountain falling on his head. He fell to his knees. He started to apologize. He said the stress had made him crazy. He said he still loved me. He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. I told him that my doctors said stress was bad for my recovery. And nothing was more stressful than a parasite that refused to let go. I left him there, sitting on the cold hardwood floor of an empty house. I got back into my SUV and felt a strange sensation. For the first time since my diagnosis, I didn't feel sick. I felt light. But the war wasn't over. Marcus was a cornered animal. And cornered animals always try to bite back. He had one card left to play, the emotional damages claim he thought he could file against me for deceiving him about my wealth. He didn't know I had a folder full of photos from his overtime nights at the hotel. I told the driver to head to the office. I had a company to run and a life to save. Marcus was a chapter I was done writing. Or so I thought. As we pulled away, I saw a black car following us. Marcus wasn't going to go quietly. He was desperate. And a desperate man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous thing in the world. Marcus was down. But a cornered animal is always the most dangerous. Part 3. The Final Reckoning. I offered him a choice, a small life or a prison cell. The black car stayed 2 car lengths behind us all the way to the city. I watched the rearview mirror. Marcus was driving like a man possessed. He was leaning over the steering wheel, his face a mask of rage. He followed me to the Apex Solutions headquarters. He watched me step out of the SUV. He saw the security team rush to open the glass doors for me. He saw the lobby staff bow their heads in respect. This was my kingdom, and he was just a trespasser at the gate. I walked into the boardroom. My team was waiting. Sarah looked at me with concern. She told me the news was already breaking in the trade journals. Marcus's former company was in a tailspin. Their stock was dropping. Investors were panicking. I sat at the head of the table. I told them to prepare a buyout offer for the logistics firm. I didn't just want to destroy Marcus's career. I wanted to own the ground he used to walk on. I wanted to turn his old office into a storage closet. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the lobby. I could hear shouting through the intercom. Marcus was downstairs. He was trying to push past the guards. He was screaming my name. He was calling me a thief. He was telling anyone who would listen that I had stolen his life. I looked at the security monitor. He looked pathetic. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He looked like the charity case he always accused me of being. I told security to let him up. Sarah gasped. She told me it was dangerous. I told her I wanted him to see the view from the top. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stumbled out. He stopped when he saw the boardroom. He saw the 20-foot mahogany table. He saw the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. He saw the logo of Apex Solutions, the company he had joked about for years. He looked at me, sitting in the center of it all. He didn't scream this time. He just shook. He asked me how long. He asked how long I had been laughing at him. I told him I never laughed. I told him I was too busy building a future for both of us. A future he threw away because he wanted to feel big by making me feel small. I told him that while he was spending my allowance on mistress gifts, I was closing deals in Europe. While he was complaining about the price of groceries, I was donating millions to the very hospital that was now saving my life. I pulled out a final document. It was a settlement. I offered him a choice. He could sign a total gag order and a no contest divorce, and I would drop the lawsuits for the misappropriated funds. I would give him enough money to rent a small apartment and start over. Or he could walk out of that room and face the full weight of my legal team. I told him I had evidence of his tax evasion from the side businesses he ran through our joint accounts. I told him he wouldn't just be poor. He would be in a jumpsuit. Marcus looked at the city below. He looked at the life he thought he owned. He realized he was never the lion. He was the flea on the lion's back. He picked up the pen. His hand was trembling so hard he could barely hold it. He signed the papers. He pushed them across the table and didn't say a word. He turned around and walked back to the elevator. He looked small. He looked old. The room was silent after he left. Sarah asked me if I was okay. I felt a sharp pain in my side, a reminder that the cancer was still there. But for the first time, the pain didn't scare me. I told her I was better than okay. I was free. The next few months were the hardest of my life. The chemo was a storm that tried to break my body. There were days I couldn't leave my bed. There were nights I cried until I had no breath left. But I wasn't alone. My mother stayed with me. My team ran the company with the precision I had taught them. I watched the sunrise over the lake every morning. I learned to love the silence of my new home. I learned that my strength didn't come from my bank account. It came from the fact that I survived the person who was supposed to love me the most. 6 months later, I walked back into the Mayo Clinic. The doctor looked at my scans. He looked at me. He smiled. He told me the word every warrior prays to hear: remission. I walked out into the crisp autumn air. I took a deep breath of the cold wind. My hair was growing back. It was short and silver. A crown of survival. I heard a rumor about Marcus. Someone said they saw him working at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. They said he looked tired. They said he told people he used to be a big shot in the city. No one believed him. He was just another face in the crowd, living in a world he didn't understand. I got into my car. I didn't look back. I had a merger to finalize. I had a life to live. I had a story that was finally mine to tell. I realized that the greatest revenge wasn't the money or the power. It was the fact that I was still here. I was standing, and I was no longer invisible. True happiness doesn't come from the things we hide. It comes from the truth we are brave enough to live. I am Elena. I am a survivor, and I am just getting started. True power isn't in the money, it's in the strength to walk away.